Planarcadia 4.5 is underway, and there is nothing that could have prepared me for the lore bombs of this patch. Because Hoyo really opened up the floodgates with this one and gave us the biggest reveal we have ever gotten. Never did I ever think that the IPC-centered patch could be as insane as it was. But at least you know as well as I do now how corrupt this corporation is and why I rant about it as often as I do. Because I have been on my soapbox about this for years, but finally all of the ugliness is put center stage. All the IPC slander was never slander, it was all facts from the very beginning without a hint of enigmata. And the utter euphoria I'm getting from this vindication I feel is all but aimed directly at me is a feeling I cannot put into words. But what I can do is break down this patch to pry open the secrets before we of course dive even deeper to discover even more secrets. So without further ado, this is the final fate of Planarcadia revealed. Okay, so we begin the insane events of this patch right where we left off. We stare down the fallen Asad Permad and he tells us that the awakening of the Veracity Husk is unstoppable and the true plan only requires patience rather than calculations. Something that a certain Couture Zane algebraic equation enthusiast would definitely agree with.
That's only because I've waited 13 million lifetimes for my vision to be realized. Countless millennia.
At least partially. But Sunday, as he does, uses his tuning to figure out what his true plan is. And he recounts that our Dice Head Hatman has completely lost his mind. Which makes sense considering that he told us before that he has the Weathering Curse. Which, according to the Weathering Curse record, men experience mental torture until they lose the ability to recognize themselves and succumb to madness. And as we've seen before,
even I find it hard to tell what goes on in this head of mine sometimes.
Who exactly are you? I have no clue either.
yeah, he's been struggling lately. So Sunday has a hard time figuring out what his true intentions are, but Asad Permad takes it upon himself to explain this, and it's twisted logic, go figure, saying that his plan is to feed all the supplicants to the husk of veracity. But since he's been beaten and accepts his defeat, he gives us his dice head as a gift from a former navigator, as he calls it, telling us to show his dice head how we will face this new challenge that he's created for us, and proceeds to throw himself into the husk of veracity, with his last wish being that he sincerely hopes that we won't be eaten by Ouroboros too. This guy is conflicted to the very end, marking the death of the long-lived en route, IC, and Asad Permad, in perfect elation fashion, sacrificing himself in an attempt to stall an unstoppable force he has no hope to contend with, leaving us to clean up the mess that he's made of Planarcadia. So we regain our bearings. Pearl calls in to tell us that the seal on the veracity has been severely damaged by Asad Permad's probability manipulation, which only gives us 8 hours to solve this crisis before all hell breaks loose, and 12 hours after that until the husk will have eaten the entire star zone. So we head back to Perdido Station and say our goodbyes to all of our friends and board the train, leaving Himiko, Danhung, and Potential Man behind to delay the husk for as long as they can. Meanwhile, Sparksy and Sampo open the doors to the tavern for refugees, using traces of the Sparksicon mimetic virus to give them masks and thus technically making them fools and granting them entry by rule of the tavern. So it's nice to see that Asad Permad is proven wrong once again, and that the Elation will not in fact stand by and watch the universe end. It's almost as if he was wrong from the very beginning. But going back to our express crew, Sunday gets his express pass and becomes an official member of the Nameless, bringing his lengthy character arc to a satisfying close, joining the faction in direct conflict with the Harmony. Because I, as well as Ashikai, have been saying before that the Harmony's goal is to assimilate all things into one, with that one being themselves. But the Trailblaze as a path is all about spreading things out and making possibilities possible, which is why I think the Trailblaze is the source of all paths, which is again directly the opposite of the Harmony. But that's another thing in a video for another day. Point is, Sunday is part of the team now and he is here to stay. And with that, we head out. But the husk saw us trying to leave and proceeds to extend its horrifying tendrils out to pull the Express back in, only for AHA themselves to pluck the Phantom Moon into the planet, buying us time to make our escape to Astropolis. So for those of you who are keeping score, AHA boarded the Express long ago, blew stuff up, then fixed the Express engine for Himiko, thus wiping out that debt. And now the Elation has saved us once again, putting us in debt to AHA. How the tables turn. Also, along the way to Astropolis, aside from Mod's head still talking,
Life is full of surprises, I suppose. Sorry for all the trouble I've caused you.
it's still alive. And if we really want to, we can roll it to see what twisted, horrible probabilities it will bring into existence. At any point, we can just do that. We don't do that, but it's more of a Chekhov's gun situation. He's gonna get rolled, his head's gonna roll at some point, and something terrible is going to happen, or something good could happen, but it hasn't happened yet. So we arrive in Astropolis, and here is where the real story begins. Because the entertainment capital of the IPC is everything you could possibly expect from the IPC. It's insidious, disgusting, underhanded, rife with corruption, and everything I could have ever asked for, all wrapped up in a neat little bow and deodorized with perfume. Or in other words, beautiful on the outside, rotten to the core on the inside. Which is a perfect characterization of the IPC as a whole. But as we take our first steps onto the manicured sandy beaches of Astropolis, we meet a familiar face. Albert in puppet form, someone we haven't seen since the war dance. And he informs us on where we are to meet with Jade. And though this sounds bad, Jade is the least of our problems this patch. Meanwhile, Ashvale and Kuchiba go on their own little mission and exclude poor Nihilux from it, so these two are up to something in the future because we do not see them for the rest of this patch. So we meet up with Satan in a pimp hat, and she gives us the rundown of the entire situation. And oh, it's bad. Because you see, the IPC is torn between doing its job and not doing its job. Meaning that, yes, they are preservation followers, but since the IPC is each department has its own opinion of what the preservation means, which means loopholes. And for the IPC, loopholes means
mass civilian casualties.
Because preserving and saving Ahatopia isn't a unanimously agreed upon goal. No. Don't be so naive. They're not preservation followers, they're preservation followers. No, turns out that 3 of the 7 department heads think it is a good idea to try and turn Ahatopia into an Aeon-powered super weapon. Something that Yabuli is willing to stake her entire career on, claiming that it will work. But we all know it won't work and we'll probably end up creating something that is even worse than Nanook. Why? Because Nihilux said so.
Grand indeed. But I fear that when the time comes, Yabuli and Oswaldo may end up creating something far more terrifying than Nanook.
Why I believe her? We'll get to that later. Point is, 3 departments say preserve Planarcadia and 3 say weaponizing it, leaving only Arita of the traditional project department as the deciding vote. And he has chosen to postpone his decision, giving us time to convince him to join the good guys. 5 hours, but still time, with Pearl and Jade both swearing on their cornerstones that they will help us, which
Pearl's transmission conveyed both her resolve and her plan to save them. She intended to invoke the gaze of the Amber Lord and borrow the power of preservation to encanvas Planarcadia once more, buying time against the Husk's breakthrough. To that end, she was willing to offer up her cornerstone. I understand. I swear by my cornerstone that what I place upon the scales this time is my unconditional trust and support. You have my word. So please rest assured.
Is more sincerity that I'm used to from these guys. But we'll be needing all the help we can get because of the 3 that voted for weaponization is the marketing development department, aka Oswaldo Schneider's department. So we know that he will be doing all that he can to get in our way and play dirty. But going back to Jade, she arranges an office for us in Lodestar Tower and we set off splitting into 2 teams. March and Nihilux go to our office, and Trailblazer and Sunday track down Arita. And along the way, we run into... Scott? Yes, turns out that Astropolis copied what is basically the atmosphere of Planarcadia so they can make and sustain Imagine 2, and Scott just happened to spawn in after we said his name in our fight against Full Wish. So everyone thought about who Scott was, and now we have Ghost Imagine Scott, who, I hate to break it to you, isn't Scott, he just thinks he is by the rule of how Ghost Imagine work. But we can believe he's Scott if you so please. Anyway, Scott claims to have a lead on where Arita will be and guides us to the Upside Down restaurant. And on our way, we run into... Asta, who is so out of place here, I thought she was a furbo. Turns out this is her home world, and she is just here taking a few vacation days. Yeah, that's it, and we don't see her again. Anyway, we make our way to the spot Scott led us to, and we find a lot of dishes left behind by Tara Van Keen, Diamond's fellow emanator of preservation, who people jokingly call, but not so jokingly, call Veracity, because holy Ika can this guy eat. So Scott leads us to the wrong guy, but fortune finds us anyway, because Arita walks right around the corner with the cleanest fit we have seen from an IPC bigwig thus far. And lectures us about respect and how he isn't the real Arita, he's the adopted son, Kenneth Arita, who takes more of a butler role than an heir type of role. But in his repeating point of respect, we deduce that by respect, he means power. So in order to get an audience with Arita, we need to have some leverage. But of course, we can't use violence.
As for using force, that would be exceedingly unwise on IPC ground.
Okay, we could, but we aren't going to, and we decide to use more of a suitable language that the IPC would understand. Meaning that we are going to go public and shine the spotlight on the billions of lives the IPC is trying to end and turning Ahatopia into a weapon, killing every civilian in the process, which would inevitably crash their stock market. So the idea is raised that we have an interview with Albert, but before we do this, we meet back up with March and Nihilux, who have already gotten into it with... the inexcusably curvaceous security bots, who most likely got their tech from the Shinjo. I'm not complaining. And they give us problems until this GigaChad robot named Lighthouse shows up and gives us an escort to Lodestar Tower, but also sending Sunday away after recognizing him as a criminal.
To think my past mistakes would catch up with me right here, right now.
You serious?
Saying that he got conflicting orders from two different sources, which is our first taste of the marketing development department getting in our way and the strategic investment department coming to our rescue. So Lighthouse leads the way and we come across these two Imagine having a discussion, and this is the hidden, most tragic string of dialogue in this patch. Long story short, the Imagine and Astropolis do not have a Fey-Kind Protection Act, and were not even aware that such an act existed. Legislation that protects their rights as beings. So now this little Plu guy is trying to get promoted so that they can at least propose the idea of having a Fey-Kind Protection Act. Meaning that Imagine and Astropolis do not have rights at all, which is horrible and disgusting to think about, but again, IPC, why are we surprised? But going back to the story, Sunday returns to the Express and we make our way to Lodestar Tower, where we are blocked by even more of Oswaldo's cronies making problems for us, only for Nihilux to reveal that she is Beatrice Melanine, none other than the Lotto Goddess who miraculously won Oswaldo's Big Lotto jackpot 3 times in a row. So she pulls rank and gets us a room. And finally, we move our furbos in and we make our way to set up our grand scheme to expose the IPC. And it works! Until it doesn't. We got shadow banned, meaning that the IPC stopped it from spreading in the algorithm, like what YouTube does when I randomly only get 30,000 views on a short. Yeah, you get it. My salts and OCD aside, we get called in for a private meeting with the department heads, which definitely isn't a trap, and we have a short debate, and we win, and we get our victory lap with Albert, Only this isn't Albert, and Oswaldo put this entire facade together just to stall us. I swear, this guy is on another level of villainy at this point. And at this point, the Trailblazer has reached his or her limit and is ready to throw down.
I'm plucking you like a chicken.
Along with Nihilux, who just happens to show up right on time and starts using Silverwolf's level 999 techniques to defeat IPC grunts that for some reason have the guts to stand up to a very angry Nameless. So we break through all of their defenses and blaze a trail straight to the inner room where all of the NPCs we've been talking to thus far have convened to congratulate each other on stalling us for so long, because of course they are all Oswaldo's minions. And at this point, the Trailblazer straight crashes out and threatens to use Asad Pramad's dice head to absolutely tear this place apart with whatever twisted RNG possibility he creates, and Lighthouse shows up to stop us with his cheap little one-shot move that nearly killed me, but he gets KO'd anyway. And finally, Kenneth, who has seen enough, shows up to give us the respect that we have earned. So yeah, I misled you earlier. We did just use violence to solve our problems and threaten literally everyone's lives, but it's the IPC, so I'd say they deserve it.
As for using force, that would be exceedingly unwise on IPC ground.
Oh, what do you need me to do? Slaughter them all? Or bankrupt them?
So Kenneth takes us to meet Arita, and long story short, he just kind of lets us tell him what our plan to save Planarcadia is, and just kind of goes along with it. Honestly, this is a wise choice though, because if I was speaking to a very angry, desperate, and exasperated raccoon holding a nuclear bomb, while also having a nuclear bomb in their chest that they can wish on at any moment, I'd say it's wise to just give them what they want. And he filters our answer to Louis Flemming, who is still alive for some reason. I thought he was dead, and he agrees as well, as long as we gave them Asad Pramad's head. So we had to give them one of our nuclear bombs, but of course we still have one, that one being the Stellaron. And thus the vote is passed and Planarcadia is preserved. But this is not where this ends, because we still need answers for all of the stuff Nihilux has been doing thus far. To which she takes us back to the Upside Down restaurant and then reveals that she is just Aha, transforming into a design that looks way too much like Sparksy. Go back, please. Yeah, like that. Stay just like that. You look way cooler. Which I did predict. At first, admittedly, I did think she was a Xandar fragment, but that was just a wild guess on the release of her picture. And then the Silverwolf trailer dropped and I got wind of her having the same voice actress as Aha, and that was enough for me. So if she becomes playable, she will be the first playable Aeon. But that is somehow not the craziest thing, because Yabu Lee might just be Polka Kakamon, or it's Kuchiba, I'm not sure, but Yabu Lee talking about using a scalpel on Asad Pramad's dice head, the thing that controls probability, when that is Polka Kakamon's area of study and expertise, and that voice changer that sounds,
Oh, me. Can't you guess what I want? You know you're signing your death sentence right here.
rather familiar. And she just happens to be represented by the number 4, which is Polka Kakamon's number. She's Genus Society number 4. It could be the biggest bait and switch of all time, or Hoyo is just subtle as a brick. Make sure you stay tuned for the video I have dropping on that. And due to this story being split in 2, I'll have to address the Robin and Aventurine story in another video, so stay tuned for that as well, because this is the final fate of Planarcadia revealed. This story was only 3 hours long, and I was absolutely locked in and captivated from start to finish. The toxic culture of an IPC world with a few beacons of hope like Lighthouse and Asta making it all more tolerable is so perfect, and I could not ask for anything more. This world is everything I've read about the IPC, and I'm so happy that everyone gets to see Oswaldo's evil put in the spotlight. I don't know if you remember, but I made a video last year complaining about how villains don't go hard enough, and since then we've had Lygus, Asad Pramad, and now Oswaldo Schneider, the absolute worst of the worst. And I've said this before and I'll say it again, heroes do not make stories great. Villains make stories great. And to this day, I stand by that. But what do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace, y'all.